Hello everybody, this is Leslie from Wall to Wall Vinyl. I wanted to jump on quickly and talk to you about adjusting your printer settings. So as you can see, I have downloaded my PNG that I'll be using. One thing I wanted to mention is that I was going to do one for Silhouette as well as Photoshop, but it is the exact same process. So once you hit your print button, that is where you make all the adjustments, and that can be done the same way in Silhouette or Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop. Any of those, it's the same process. So we'll go ahead and get started. There are often times that you buy an image, and once you go and print it and sublimate it on something, you find that your colors are a little bit off. This is most prevalent when you are doing something such as self-portraits or something like that. There's a lot of times that adjustments need to be made in the coloring. So what I want you to do, and I am going to mention one thing that is specific to Silhouette. If you guys will look here, if you go over here to your page setup and click on that, that will bring to you everything that you are doing with your page. So you can see that my page is set for 12 by 12, and if you look down here, you'll see Show Print Border. If you click that off and then click it on again, you'll see this little faint black line around your image. I want you to really pay attention to that. That will let you know that your sizing is correct, because there are times, and I've worked with a couple of customers where we just couldn't figure it out, and what it was that their print box was only showing this much. This box is showing you specifically what is going to show up on your paper. So obviously you want your whole image. So in her instance, she had it set to a default. So make sure that you don't have any defaults on here at all. Because as you can see, you can get a whole bunch of different pages. So just make sure I always have it on custom, and I always adjust it myself. Also make sure that you have machine none, cutting mat none, because those are specific to if you're cutting with your Silhouette. So just a little something that's prevalent just here, specific to Silhouette. Then, of course, it's got anything that has writing or that needs to have a specific orientation. You've got to flip that opposite so that when you press it, it comes out correctly. So flip horizontally. There's two ways you can do this in Silhouette. I always like to use the flip horizontally instead of the mirror because I don't need two images. So I've flipped my image, and then this is where the printer settings in both, or probably about any system that you work with, is where you're going to make your changes. So if I go and look at, and I click the print box, you can also get through to printing through here, print here, or you can do your print setup page here. I usually just go through the print button. So if you see, I have an Epson ET15000, so pick whatever printer you have. And then I want you to go to preferences right under that. One thing I want you to notice, if you look down here, I have done a preset for the things that I prefer. So what I do is I check my paper tray. For those of you that ET15000, I always use my paper tray. But let's say you're using an Epson 7710 or 7720, you're going to use one of your cassettes. So you would just need to pick what your printer will accommodate. The same thing with papers. I do 99% of my printing on 13 by 19, so I'm going to come down here to the Super B 13 by 19. You can also adjust it in user defined if you want to change to something that's not marked clearly there. I think that's a fairly new addition here, but regardless. Then you always want to make sure that you have the color clicked. And the other thing that I find that people skip over that you want to make sure is your print speed. I always move it to the quality side. That is where you arrange, or that you can avoid some of those things like printer wheels, those kind of problems that you get when you're printing fast. So it does take a little bit longer, but it's well worth the time. And then I get the best effects when I use the plain paper or the bright white paper. There's a lot of different ideas out there of what works best. As I've said in my previous tutorials, these things that I'm showing you are what work for me. So, as I always say in my tutorials, get to know your software, your devices, and your equipment, because they are going to have little tweaks that are specific to you. So there's your first tray, or your first page. If you have been printing, you have not had any issues, you're pretty happy with what you've got, then I would go ahead and make that preset. If this is the first time that you're setting up your printer, the first time you're printing from a specific program, then you would want to go over here to more options. And this is where you make the changes in your color. So you would want to click on custom and then go to advanced. And if you look there, I prefer to have the Epson Vivid. I switch inks quite a bit, but I know that each ink has their own ICM code. So you are welcome to put that in. That's just right here. But for me, it's just easier just to keep the Epson Vivid. Then down here is where you adjust your colors. It's a little bit easier for me to do it on the slide bar. So if you look, it's brightness, contrast, saturation, and then here's your coloring. So if you're finding that you have an image that is super bright and you don't like it, then you can adjust that here. If you're having an image that has a lot of yellow in it or a lot of orange, then you can adjust your yellow down here. And that's how you get rid of some of those things that maybe don't look good on the prints. So once you're happy with your settings here, and it might take you printing a couple times to get where you're happy with it. So what I would suggest, number one, is take a little tiny piece of polyester. You can get polyester fabric very, very cheap. And just do a tiny, tiny print. Press it, see how it looks. And then you can adjust what you need to, but then you haven't wasted a blank. Number two, I know you guys are going to get sick of hearing me say this, but always have extra blanks on hand, because it inevitably you're going to mess up on one. I think people that have been doing it for years and years and years, they still mess up. So that's what I would suggest there. Once you're happy with this, go ahead and click OK. And then you can go back to this first page. And like I said, you can click that button, add or subtract presets. Name your preset. For me, I put Leslie's favorite. And then I gave it an icon. And then once you give it a name and an icon, it will allow you to save it. And it will show up immediately in this panel. So then every time you come in and open, all you have to do, instead of usually, if you don't have a preset, then you have to adjust this every time that you reopen your program. This makes it so all you have to do is click Leslie's favorite, and it's going to automatically populate all of these without you, and your color options, without you having to mess with it. So then you would click OK, then you're ready to print. The other thing I would suggest is I like to always turn on a print preview, just so I can make sure before I actually print it and waste the paper that it looks okay. So that's the other thing I prefer. But then you're good to go and go ahead and print. I hope that this helps clear up some of the troubles with color and adjusting printing so that you get the color outcomes that you want. Have a great day, and thanks for joining.